Hi again, welcome back to my channel. I love to have you here. If you're new, I'm Stephanie and I make videos about language learning. I give tips and tricks on how to best learn languages and how I have managed to learn 7 foreign languages at this point. So in this video, what I want to do is do a little bit of a continuation of my other video on Spanish 101 in which I went over some greetings, and this video is going to be dedicated to travel since it is the middle of August currently and many of us are traveling, and if you happen to be planning a trip to a Spanish-speaking country, I think that it can be very useful to have a few phrases up your sleeve. I don't just want to give you the phrases, I also want to point out some things about the Spanish language along the way that can help you learn Spanish. It's just going to be in the context of travel this time, but anyways, we're going to be doing some learning and breaking down of the different words and sentence structures, etc. So let's get started. So let's begin by how you get to the airport. You could be using public transportation, in which case it's not about phrases, it's not about talking to anybody, you just kind of look through it by yourself. But if you are going there with a taxi or an Uber, etc., here are some phrases that you might hear from your driver. For example, ¿cuántas maletas tiene? Well, this word cuántas means how many, and you can also use it in other senses, right? It comes from the word cuánto, which can have a lot of different meanings, but if you're asking like how many or how much of something, you can say cuántos, which is plural and masculine, or cuántas, which is plural and feminine. And so why is that? Because the word maleta, la maleta, suitcase, is a feminine word. So sometimes question words in Spanish, they change based on gender, based on number, and this is certainly the case with the word cuántas, cuántos, etc. So cuántas maletas tiene, and they're asking tiene because usually people are going to address you, especially if they don't know you, they're going to address you in this formal way. Tiene is the polite form of the verb tener. Usted tiene. If you don't want to be polite, you can say tienes. But in this case, since you don't really know this person, cuántas maletas tiene is something that you'd better ask, or something that actually the driver is likely to ask you. How many suitcases do you have? So they can help you with them. Something else that you could be asked is ¿a qué terminal va? ¿A qué? So to which terminal va? And this time, again, we can see va instead of vas, because again, it's a formal situation, it's kind of driver-passenger type of situation, you don't know each other, so this is why this is something that you are more likely to hear, unless, of course, in some places there's going to be like more people that are more informal with that and they don't tend to use usted as much. Of course, it always depends on the person, but in general, it is something you're likely to hear. So how do you respond to these questions? When you're asked how many suitcases you have, ¿cuántas maletas tiene?, you can say uno, which is in most cases, especially if you have like one big one, or it can be dos. Most people don't travel with more than that, but you get my drift. It requires knowing a few simple numbers in Spanish in order to answer this question. Or you can also use the verb itself, and you can say tengo uno, I have one. And ¿a qué terminal va? Terminal uno, terminal dos, terminal tres. You can simply say that, or if you want to have like a little bit more of a complete phrase, you can say a la terminal uno. Once you're at the airport there, you can count on being addressed formally. So I'm just going to give you those forms and options for that. So when you first get to the check-in desk, for example, they're going to greet you. They're going to say buenos días, buenas tardes, depending on the time of day. And then what are some questions that you are likely to hear? Well, the first one would be ¿a dónde vuela? Where are you flying to? And you can say, for example, a España, a Mexico, a Chile, etc. After that, you're probably going to be asked for your passport. Su pasaporte, por favor. And again, pay attention. Vuela is the formal form, goes with usted. Su pasaporte. Su instead of tú, because it would be tu pasaporte if you're speaking to a friend, but since the agent at the airport is addressing you in a formal and polite way, they're asking su pasaporte. Once you provide your passport, once they kind of enter your name in the system and everything, you could also ask, ¿podría elegir mi asiento? Podría is a special form of the verb, it's called the conditional in Spanish, and it's also something that you can ask when you're trying to be a little bit more formal. So of course you can say puedo, which is the original indicative simple form of the verb poder. But podría is more useful in the situation because it's a bit more formal. So you can use both, and let me know if you'd like me to make a lesson on that, on how to sound more polite, things like the conditional, things like that. Generally in an airport, I would advise to say, ¿Podría elegir mi asiento, por favor? And then you're going to receive your answer, whether you can do so or no. And you're probably going to be asked another question about suitcases, which is, ¿Cuántas maletas va a facturar? Now we already went through cuántas maletas and how it needs to correspond, be feminine, plural, etc. Va a is a very interesting construction in Spanish. Usually that is a conjugated form of the verb ir, which means to go. So it's kind of like the English going to. Va a facturar, it expresses this immediate future. There's also other future tenses in Spanish, but this one is the simplest and the one that I recommend for beginners. So voy a facturar, I will check in, or like as many suitcases. Facturar in general means that you're gonna get them in the luggage hold and that they're going to be your checked in luggage and not your hand luggage. So yeah, you can say voy a facturar, vas a facturar, va a facturar. Just learn to conjugate the verb ir, and if you use ir plus a, that is going to be very useful for you to speak about something that you intend to do, something in the immediate future. Then once you've kind of checked your luggage, once you've given, your passport and everything, you're likely to get your boarding pass, and you're likely to hear the agent say, aquí tiene su tarjeta de embarque. Tarjeta de embarque is boarding pass, and usually in Spanish, whenever there's a certain adjective that would come, for example, before the noun in English, like boarding, it defines pass. In Spanish, a lot of times that is the construction de plus a noun. So it's like tarjeta, which is in general can have many meanings, like pass, card, etc. De embarque. Embarque is the noun that comes from embarcar, which is to board, so boarding pass. Tarjeta de embarque. And what it's probably going to have included on there is the puerta de embarque, but then if for some reason it changes or something and you want to ask for information in the airport, like where to go, what's your boarding location, what's your gate in which you're going to board the plane, you can ask somebody, ¿Cuál es la puerta de embarque? ¿Cuál is like which one? What is the gate? So it is also something that is useful to you to know, like a question word that also changes cuál es, but unlike cuántos, cuántas, it's something that doesn't change for gender, it just simply changes for number. Once you've landed, you may ask, ¿Dónde puedo encontrar un taxi? ¿Dónde puedo is obviously the word for where. Puedo, again, we see that verb poder, where can I? And usually after poder, you just use the infinitive of the verb, so you don't really change it in any way, shape, or form. Just say, ¿Dónde puedo encontrar? And of course, once you're at the hotel, you can say, Tengo una reserva a nombre de, and you include your name. Or other questions about what's nearby, such as, ¿Dónde está la piscina? Or, for example, ¿Dónde puedo encontrar? Again, same construction. ¿Dónde puedo encontrar un restaurante? Or you can ask, ¿A qué hora es el desayuno? What time is the breakfast? ¿A qué hora in general is a very good way to ask about when something's taking place. Or ¿cuándo? Just like a simpler, shorter form of asking about timing. And potentially something that is also quite important, ¿Cuál es la contraseña de Wi-Fi? Especially if you're in a country in which data can be very expensive, that's a good word to know. So once you're in your Spanish-speaking country, you might need some phrases such as ¿Dónde está? And in this case, you might hear certain examples such as a la izquierda, a la derecha, cerca de, en la esquina, or somebody might say, está lejos. You probably need a taxi to get there. Something else that might be very useful is the phrase ¿Cuánto cuesta?, which you can ask mostly when you're shopping, but of course you can also use in a restaurant. It would be a little bit weird. In a restaurant, it's much better to say la cuenta, por favor. So just kind of to ask for the bill at the end. But if you're going through a menu and you want to ask how much I don't know, the special of the day cost, which changes every day, it might not be on the menu, then you can also use cuánto cuesta. And as you can see, our favorite cuánto that you saw before is cuántas. Here it is simply in its kind of simple form. When you're asking about how much does this cost, just kind of simple. You don't need to make it agree with certain noun or anything like that. You just ask it as a standalone question word, and in this case it's in its bare form, cuánto. And last but not least, a couple of very useful phrases. No entiendo, vale, in case that your Spanish is not good enough yet, or for example, repita más despacio, por favor. Please repeat more slowly. This could be very useful because sometimes in Spanish-speaking countries people speak very quickly, and so it might not be that you don't know these words, it's just like with the accent and the speed it can be a little hard. So repita más despacio, por favor is very useful because perhaps when somebody repeats a phrase more slowly you can understand. So there you have it. I hope that was useful. I hope you learned some phrases, but also, some peculiarities of those phrases and of the expressions that are used in Spanish, and how and why certain things are said a certain way. I really wanted to make this lesson kind of a twofold one, where you both get some travel phrases for travel, but then you also, in addition to that, you get some insight as to the structure of the Spanish sentences and how the language works. Let me know what topics you'd like me to cover in the future for my Spanish 101 series. Like and subscribe if you appreciated this video and if you want to see more of that type of content from me. And I will see you very soon. And until then, have safe and pleasant travels. Bye.